people, the headlines, the issues impacting you and your family. This Week in Cincinnati on WCPO 9.
Welcome. Hope you're having a good weekend. I'm Evan Millward. Today on This Week in Cincinnati, we will focus on the story that has dominated coverage here this week, that shooting in Smale Riverfront Park that left 2 teenagers dead and 3 wounded. The dead are 16-year-old Milo Watson and 19-year-old Dexter Wright Jr. Police say they shot each other after an argument. 3 other teens, 2 girls and a boy, all under 18, were hurt in the crossfire. Reporter Jake Ryle shows us what happened at the park through the lens of police radio traffic.
Got a bunch of kids. I thought it was fireworks, but they're running away from the park.
It's 10:48 p.m. Sunday. Hundreds of teenagers are at Smale Riverfront Park. Police get a report of multiple people shot.
Just across from the carousel. I've got at least 2 down.
Officers work quickly to find the victims.
We have a female and a teenage male shot at the playground. Now stating there is also a female shot underneath the suspension bridge.
East of the swing behind Paul Brown Stadium. I have one that's critical.
And did what they could to help before medics arrived.
Started CPR on our victim, 5300.
Police Chief Elliot Isaac says he's proud of the response.
Truly, truly heroes. Officers applied tourniquets, rendered life-saving measures. One officer even intervened to try to save the individual that succumbed to his injuries.
Police say Princeton High School junior Milo Watson and 19-year-old Dexter Wright Jr. were involved in an ongoing argument. That fight led to the 2 shooting at each other and injuring 3 others, all under the age of 18, in the crossfire. Minutes after the initial response, CPD closed down Mering Way from Great American Ballpark to Paul Brown Stadium. Also closed to pedestrians, the bridges from Kentucky.
When you have an incident like this, a number of people are injured. Before you know what you're dealing with, you need that significant response.
That was Jake Ryle reporting. The shootings raised a broader question about public safety at the park. So we took an in-depth look at police reports to get some perspective there. Reporter Courtney Francisco looks at the numbers and the kind of violations there.
Locals tell us Smale Park is sometimes known as a party spot for small groups after hours.
There's groups of kids here. It's just unfortunate that some kids live that lifestyle and, just try hard to stay away from it.
Brandon Lane says he was in the park when the shooting happened.
I heard some pops after the fireworks and, I seen everybody look towards this direction.
It's the first shooting in Smale Park in 4 years, according to police records.
I would welcome serious law enforcement. I don't care if it's people like you used to see in Washington, D.C., where these cops are carrying rifles. Just be present.
Taking a closer look at the issue, police document about 90 calls for service in Smale Park in the past 6 months, around 150 in 2020. Those range from trespassing to armed person. Records show 6 criminal cases in the past 4 years, for theft, 2 minor.
Well, I think that the city should beef up security here if that's going to occur.
The day after the shooting, families enjoyed the riverfront.
Where we at right now was recommended that we come. That's how we got to be in this spot right here, because it was recommended as a nice place to be.
Police on the riverfront tell me the department increased patrols here in 2019 after a shooting near the restaurants on the banks. They say they ride through Smale Park each hour after 11 p.m. closing, warning people to leave.
There's definitely a lot of social gatherings going around, for sure, without a doubt.
That was Courtney Francisco reporting. Out of those 6 criminal records in the past 4 years, none of them have been in the last 6 months. Local leaders are condemning that shooting, but they have varying ideas about the best approach to preventing more. On Monday, Mayor John Cranley issued a statement that said in part, quote, "Our cops have been diligent about patrolling in parks that attract groups of teenagers and will continue to do so. But this issue is much deeper and cannot alone be solved with crime-fighting strategies." We also spoke with council members about the deeper issues this shooting is raising.
We need to figure out, how are all these guns getting in our community, because somebody is making a big profit off of all of this violence. We also have to look at, are we providing recreational opportunities? Are we providing jobs? Are we providing the training? Are we providing the education that our young people need so that they have a bright future?
Our guardians have a responsibility, and our parents our aunts and uncles to know where their babies are at 10, 11, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. Yeah. And so we're very concerned about this. Our police officers cannot do all of this on their own.
All the officers in the world cannot stop things like this from happening. Police respond when they need to, and they do, but we all have to take responsibility for the behavior of our children, for our own behavior.
Mayor Cranley had more to say about this Tuesday. He called for re-education of values. He said it's an issue that can't just be handled by police.
This is an all hands on deck between the city, the county, the federal government, and we will continue to do more. But what we ultimately need is for the community to step up as well.
Reporter Whitney Miller spoke with community leaders in East Westwood on Tuesday after the mayor's comments. That's a community that has been rocked, too, by gun violence recently.
This re-education of values really struck a chord today with community leaders in Westwood who have already been advocating for change. They say those values aren't necessarily missing. They just need to be nurtured. And the only way to do that is with resources.
We need, to put our hands and of love and hugs and attention on our young people, and to talk about the true meaning of respect and self-respect and self-love, and not this macho, BS where you feel like you have to kill somebody who looks at you the wrong way.
In a press conference Tuesday, Mayor Cranley denounced youth gun violence after a shooting in Smale Riverfront Park on 4th of July left 2 teens dead and 3 wounded. He told reporters young people are using violence to solve disputes and blamed that on a lack of values.
They have the wrong values. It's simple. It starts at home, it starts at school, it starts in community, it starts with role models.
You all got a gift. You got a gift. It may not be told at home.
But role models are there.
And the mayor, he doesn't know these children. He doesn't know these kids. He only know what he see around him in his big house. He don't know what he see around us. We a family here.
Carol Brown and Rodney Christian are just a couple of the people in East Westwood fighting to make a change. 6 days a week, he and members of Third Presbyterian Church host a recreation program on the basketball court.
If this church was not here, I think about that too. I said, wow, those kids over there on the court right now, where would they be? There's nothing in this community.
Rodney says values are the reason he and his staff stay in the community. He says kids in the community need a place to go and practical resources.
The west side needs a rec center. There's land, sitting. So before putting down and all these other things and saying that there's one door that's a problem, there's quite a few doors that we need to talk about and go inside. Not just knock on the door, but go inside.
Christian says Westwood and other communities like his need city leaders to come into the neighborhood and talk with families, pinpoint those people already doing that work, and have conversations about how the city can help close some of those gaps. For now, reporting in downtown, Whitney Miller, WCPO 9 News.
This week, the Hamilton County Prosecutor's Office tells us 16-year-old Milo Watson had been accused of felonious assault last year. Prosecutor Joe Dieters wanted to try him as an adult. The court refused. Instead, Watson was put on probation after pleading guilty. Dieters says 19-year-old Derek Dexter Wright Jr. did not have a record. So what comes next? Well, just ahead on This Week in Cincinnati, the law enforcement response at the local and now federal levels. Welcome back. Today on This Week in Cincinnati, we're focusing on that shooting at Smale Park that left 2 teens dead and 3 others wounded. On Thursday, we learned just how federal authorities are joining the fight against gun violence here. 16 people now face federal gun charges. These are unrelated to that shooting at the park. But the city of Cincinnati, ATF, and the sheriff's office are all now working together on this. Police say it should serve as a warning. 15 of the 16 people arrested this time around are convicted felons. That means they're not supposed to be carrying guns. One of them even, Carl Godfrey, faces charges in a murder for hire plot. Cincinnati Mayor John Cranley says battling gun violence should be everyone's responsibility.
This ultimately comes down to personal responsibility, taking care of your family, making sure that you don't resort to gun violence to resolve disputes.
The mayor says the city's investing $1 million in what he calls community safety response programs. Police Chief Elliot Isaac has been saying all week the problem of gun violence, especially youth gun violence, is not an issue that can be solved by law enforcement alone.
The reality is, this is all of our problem. Everybody needs to be involved. The government, the state, every individual, parents need to be responsible for their children. All of our gun crime is not attributed to juveniles. So, you know, everybody has a piece of this.
On his end, CPD is launching a gun crime intelligence center with the ATF. That'll open next month. It'll be used to track and trace illegal guns, among other things. New security measures took effect this weekend. Another 20 to 25 officers are on duty. Their mission isn't to provide crowd control at places like Smale Park. Rather, it is to respond wherever they're needed. And in the prosecutor's office, Joe Dieters is calling for a war on illegal drugs. He says the shootout at Smale Park was the tipping point for him. But as our Mariel Carbone explains, the crackdown isn't exclusive to the courtroom.
There are 30 Cincinnati police officers tasked with just recovering illegal guns and picking up the people who have them. Now, once that's happened, the Hamilton County prosecutor is calling for stricter punishment.
We recovered a gun from him yesterday.
It's a busy beat to be on.
We get a couple a day, so we're pretty busy.
Lieutenant Eric Vogelpohl is commander of the Cincinnati Police Department's Gun Crime Task Force, which tracks and recovers illegal guns.
It's very data-driven, targeted enforcement. We respond to, like I said, where the phone calls come from, the shot spotters come from, where the bodies are, for lack of a better word.
So far this year, the task force has recovered about 240 illegal guns. Department-wide, that number is about 800. Vogelpohl says more and more they're coming from young kids.
We're finding guns on 12, 13, 14-year-olds. You know, obviously the 16-year-old that was shot this past weekend, it's unfortunate.
That shooting, which killed 2 teens,
that was just the straw that broke the camel's back.
has Hamilton County's prosecutor, Joe Dieters, calling for a war on illegal guns. And he's asking for the police to help.
If they find these people with guns, bring them to us and we'll deal with them.
After that, he wants a stricter punishment.
I made it clear to my assistants that we are not plea bargaining gun cases at all.
Dieter says this policy would affect anyone charged with gun violence, but mostly those charged with weapons under disability. That's when a convicted felon is caught with a gun.
I'm talking about violent criminals, people that carry guns or are convicted of carrying guns, so they're under disability, and they continue to do it.
It's the same focus for the Gun Crime Task Force.
Repeat offenders, repeat shooters, repeat victims.
Both working proactively to prevent another shooting.
Every gun we take off, it provides someone else an opportunity to come outside because they're not in fear for their life or not worried about getting a random bullet.
And Vogelpohl says that a lot of these guns they're recovering have been used multiple times. In fact, one of the guns had been used 15 times at 14 different locations. Reporting downtown, I'm Mariel Carbone, WCPO 9 News.
Prosecutor Dieters also says police should start a policy of stopping and frisking people on the street suspected of having an illegal gun. He says community activism isn't targeting the people committing the crimes. But as you might imagine, some local leaders say that controversial policy would be nothing more than racial profiling. Iris Rowley helped reform CPD in 2001 by working on the original collaborative agreement. She says the prosecutor's comments are inappropriate and out of order.
If you think somebody's carrying, you have every right to stop and frisk them. Every right. It's not racist. I don't care what color they are. If you think a white guy walking downtown is illegal carrying a gun, pat him down. For your own safety, you're allowed to do that.
It's frustrating because it would be ineffective at stopping crime, and it would cause the relations in this community to deteriorate. And again, it would be costly to the city as well. I mean, lawsuits, I guarantee you, would go through the roof in the city of Cincinnati.
Pastor Damon Lynch III of the New Prospect Baptist Church there, he held a community roundtable discussion on this issue on Saturday. Up next, what community leaders are doing to reach teens before they make life-altering decisions. Welcome back. Today on This Week in Cincinnati, we're looking at that shooting in Smale Riverfront Park that left 2 teens dead and 3 hurt, and of course this overall spike in shootings here. Community leaders now are calling for people to come together to solve the city's gun violence problem. Reporter Lisa Smith spoke to them, asking them about the larger issues raised by this particular shooting.
And when you feel hopeless, you become reckless. And when you become reckless, you become dangerous.
Cincinnati community leaders we spoke to tonight say they are tired of the senseless killing on Cincinnati streets.
We have work to do.
Many, like Iris Rowley, say there are many reasons why, but not enough solutions.
I've asked this question as a Black United Front member for the past 20 years. What are we going to do about the guns?
She says there was a program several years ago called Out of the Crossfire, led by a UC researcher who talked one-on-one with the shooters.
She would be able to do some holistic intake and wrap services around them to understand what placed them in that predicament.
But money dwindled.
I would love to ask shooters, what were you thinking?
However, this weekend, Pastor Damon Lynch will open up his Roselawn Church for a community conversation about gun violence in Cincinnati.
I mean, it's easy to say Tamir Rice, John Crawford III, Walter Scott, George Floyd, Sandra Bland. We know those names like the back of our hands. But nobody's going to say Milo Watson or Sean Johnson or Dexter Wright.
God Squad Pastor Jackie Jackson agrees.
So as a community, we are allowing ourselves to be held hostage by shooters and killers because they feel emboldened knowing that they can walk around the community and no one's going to say anything. No one's going to tell on them.
That was Lisa Smith reporting. Much of the responsibility to end youth violence in Cincinnati is now being placed on those community groups and leaders. Schools say they're putting plans in place. Reporter Taylor Nimmo hears from teachers and coaches on what solutions look like to them.
After the recent Smale Park shooting, the question now becomes what needs to be done to make sure something like this doesn't happen again. The Smale Park violence hitting close to home for Don Community High School. Dexter Wright Jr., one of the teens killed on Sunday night, graduated from Don Community High School just a few years ago.
It's terrible. It's terrible. Anytime this happens, and this is not the first time that it's happened, and that's, I feel bad, and I pray for the family, of course. Such a delightful kid. I remember him here at the school. And, for things like that to happen, it really shines a light on how far we have to still come with youth, the teenagers in this city.
Cincinnati police calling on the help of the community.
We need responsible adults to be responsible for juveniles.
Superintendent Davenport hopes to organize a week-long event to show teens they're cared for.
We do it for Teacher Appreciation Week. It's the same concept. We do it for, they just had the Pride stuff that was going on here in the city. So why not devote a whole week to teens, the businesses here in Cincinnati, and us as a community care about them, and they can come to us and they can tell us anything, and hopefully as adults we can understand some of the struggles that they're going through.
Bobby Calder, teacher and varsity baseball coach at Withrow High School, says sports can also be a positive influence.
I think it provides just a great opportunity for those kids to have another voice of positivity, and just encourage them to continue doing the right thing, and being at the right place at the right time, doing the right thing is something that we preach.
Now, many seem to agree that the solution isn't going to happen overnight. However, it is going to involve a community-wide effort. At Don Community High School, Taylor Nimmo, WCPO 9 News.
This Week in Cincinnati, we'll be right back. That is This Week in Cincinnati for this Sunday. Obviously, we've just scratched the surface of our coverage and our commitment to covering this issue. Make sure you join us for breaking news, weather, and sports here at 6 and 11 tonight.